Hey, it's Drew, and I just wanted to do a quick little intro to this show, which we just recorded in an Uber on the way to Tampa International Airport. And the most funny thing of this whole recording was that after we finished, our driver, Jeff Miller, turns out worked for a company that was bought by Vertiv. It was unbelievable. Jeffrey, just say hello to the audience.
Hello, audience.
So it was kind of you talk about small world. Anyway, enjoy the show.
Welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite, featuring the sharpest minds in marketing, inspirational case histories, and weekly insights you can apply to your business. Find out why top CMOs rank this podcast among their favorites. Now, here's your host, Chief Marketing Renegade, Drew Nizer.
Hello, Renegade Thinkers. This is a first for Renegade Thinkers Unite. We're actually recording an episode in a cab. We just got left the CMO Club Summit where we were totally pumped up talking about brands and demand generation. And Jennifer, Renaud, and I decided that we could actually produce an amazing podcast in a cab on the way. So first of all, Jennifer, who is the CMO of Vertiv, welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite.
Thank you so much. It's awesome to be here.
All right, so here we are. We're in a cab, and it's really this is hard because it's beautiful down here in Tampa. But I wanted to record this episode because a lot of times CMOs say to me when they have a conversation with the board of directors and the CEO, this brand thing is called fuzzy. And when I talked to Jennifer on the phone in preparation for a panel, or actually a workshop at the CMO Club Summit, she mentioned she had two experiences where brand existed and then brand was taken away. And I just can't wait for her to share with you what happened in both of these cases. But first of all, before we get started a little bit, just tell us a fun fact about yourself, Jennifer, so that the folks, other than that you're game to do just about anything when it comes to recording a podcast.
Okay, it's true. I am game to do almost anything, and I was going to actually consider renaming your podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I really liked, that cash cab, and so for every good answer, I'd like $1.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, I think that could work. And I also like, I like carpool karaoke.
Oh, good.
So maybe we'll sing an answer.
Oh, that would be
which
awesome.
I think could be kind of fun.
Yes.
And then really one of my favorite TV shows is comedians in cars drinking coffee.
We're doing all three of those.
So this is going to be Renegade marketers in taxi going to airport.
I love it.
So I think that's the new name.
Okay.
And so you can subtitle it when we're doing this. Well,
yes.
We're stopping fast.
Okay. Ooh.
So
that's a good fun fact.
Yeah,
yes,
so that's fun fact because I just made that up.
Yes.
Fun fact. I was thinking about that because I was asked the other day what was my first job. So my first real paying job was detasseling corn in Iowa.
Oh, I got to ask some questions about that. Detasseling, and were there somebody there was someone who was the shucker, right? And so you were the detasseler.
Well, I think I could be a little more graphic. In detasseling corn, you're actually making seed corn, so you're pulling the tassel off.
Ooh.
Yes, so that when you make a hybrid corn, the mating happens across rows.
Oh.
That's really what's happening.
I see.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's a very interesting. So corns can mate. And, most of the time when we're on these podcasts, we don't talk about mating corn, which is kind of cool. But here's your real question, is what did you learn from that experience that you've applied in your career since?
Well, I actually learned that is really hard work when you trudge a mile in mud at 5 o'clock in the morning. That's hard work. There really isn't anything I do today that's that hard.
It's true. I spent 2 months on kibbutz when I was in college, and there were a couple of jobs. One was melon picking and farming at 4 a.m. Another one was working in a factory. I took the factory floor. Much easier work. Okay, so we got the first job out of the way, and you, when we were talking, you mentioned you had a very interesting experience at Oracle, and I'd love to hear what was the situation like, and talk about what happened.
Okay, great. So first, I'd like to give props to the team that was there before me because they did an amazing job of creating a category called Marketing Cloud. as a result, there became a number of marketing clouds. One of the unique things that happened in that is, the marketing cloud came to be by a number of acquisitions. So Eloqua, Responsys, Maximizer, et cetera, that came up with what is now the Oracle Marketing Cloud. Part of their decision was to effectively rename each of those top brands to, Oracle Marketing Cloud Marketing Automation and Oracle Marketing Cloud Cross-Channel Orchestration, which, created a couple of problems. Number one, we actually had to explain what each of these was when we already had Eloqua. And number two is when people started to search Eloqua and they'd hit the site, they'd leave, because there was no one there.
Right, and that's so interesting. So when you have a brand, you get to explain less, right? That's sort of, they know you. And I want to let's put this into sort of circumstance of people you do business with every day. You know them, you like them, and you trust them. And you think about it, the relationship and I knew lots of people who were big Eloqua fans. And for them, particularly the ones who were early adopters of it, it felt like a personal friend. They had a relationship with us that they trusted. And so you take that away, and what do you have?
Well, you have nothing. I mean, people lost their identity. I mean, I think the interesting thing about Eloqua especially was people identified as Ella Queens and Ella Kings because they were so into the brand. And then we took that away.
Okay. So you have a brand win. People adopt your brand and say, we're part of your community. We were Ella Queens and Ella Kings. And so that's an interesting sort of litmus test for you in the software business. Do you have people who are that devoted to it? And so I want to, on an episode earlier, actually twice, I had the CMOs of Marketo. I've attended Marketo Nation twice. I don't know if they're Marketo tiers or something like that. I can't remember. But those people were really, really avid fans. And I then subsequently talked to Ann Lunis, who is the CMO of Adobe. And it's been very interesting to watch because when I asked her, so is Adobe a branded house or a house of brands? She said, we're a branded house. But if you watch what they've done, it's Marketo, an Adobe company. They did not walk away from that equity. At least they haven't done it day one.
Day one, right. They haven't done that yet. So I think it's a great way of looking at that because especially in that particular space, there is a lot of commitment and loyalty to those brands. So I think that's really helpful.
And I think part of this is about the investment so the thing that you can't really appreciate with software companies and the relationship is how much time it takes to truly master. And when you've mastered it and you've been certified, if you rip that name out, you've ripped a part of the soul of your community out. So at Oracle, how did they, or were they able to respond? What did they do to try to deal with this once they realized that people were looking for Eloqua and Responsys?
Well, it was an interesting conversation that we were having because, of course, at the time this was happening, Marketo was also building its brand. And so, you start to ask the question when we feel like we're under a little pressure and they're biting at our heels a little bit, do we feel like it's the competition that's a challenge or is something else affecting our business? And we started really looking at absolutely everything that was going on. So looking at the digital assets and what's happening with our bounce rates, what's happening with the time on page. And we could start to see a couple of things. First of all, people are still searching or actually typing in Eloqua.com and still typing in Responsys.com, but they're landing on a page that says Oracle Marketing Cloud and doesn't have the brand name on it, so they leave.
And which is kind of amazing.
Yeah.
And so so we think about this for a moment. Oracle is clearly a branded house. I mean, this is a company that says, hey, everybody's heard of Oracle.
Right.
Why should that be a problem? But it happens when, this is sort of a classic, what do you do with the acquisitions? Now, you all know, regular listeners to the show, that I'm a branded house guy, and we don't do house of brands. That doesn't mean they're wrong. That's just what we focus on and specialize. So I really do appreciate the idea of what Oracle is trying to do. But I think it's really the execution that screws it up. You didn't give away for those Ella Queens and Ella Kings to sort of become something new or to evolve with you, to come over. They just sort of were cold turkey. And so did eventually Oracle sort of say, oh, hey guys, we're really, with Eloqua's, it's still here?
Yeah, we did actually. When we realized, and it happened when I went to visit a partner, and the partner asked me the question, what did you guys do with Responsys? And I said, what do you mean? Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And went back, and that's when I really started diving into the questions, and we went to the web team and said, can we just bring back the name? Like, can we just make sure it's all over the website so that it is Oracle Eloqua, Oracle Responsys, Oracle BlueKai? And will that help us? Will that bring it back? And it did. You know, if you really think about what started to happen in our engagement then with our prospects and customers, we started to see a material change. And that was incredibly important because, of course, you want to fill the funnel.
So it's just such an interesting story. Now, this is, and I want to make this leap and I can't, and part of it is just, it's been a long couple of days. I want to be able to say that brand matters, and therefore you should be able to talk to your CEO and invest in brands. And these companies obviously built brands. What we've simply established here is that when you take brand away, you lose a lot. Now we're going to eventually try to get to brand matters later in the show, but for now, just it's remarkable. In that specific example, Oracle's a well-known brand. You took Eloqua out of the business, tanked. Okay, we're going to take a break, and you're not going to believe this, but this happened again to Jennifer's. So stay with us.
Did you know that Renegade Thinkers Unite was ranked number 2 of the top 10 podcasts for CMOs by Crackerjack Marketing? Wow, we're really honored. Now, we couldn't do that without amazing guests, and we've had some amazing CMOs on this show, and also terrific listeners like you all. If you like what we do here, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player. That way, you'll never miss an episode. Also, as a special thanks, I'd like to send you a free ebook on Renegade Thinkers. Now, for that, just email drew@renegade.com. Now let's get back to the show.
Okay, we're back. We're still in the cab. It's all going well. Traffic's not too bad on the way to the airport. So this is gonna be a very tight show. I can just feel it. So we were talking about an Oracle. So then you go to this company called Vertiv, which is how big?
Vertiv. We are a $4.5 billion company.
Right, so this is a $4.5 billion company that I'm pretty sure no one on the show has heard of. But when you get there, you sort of discover something kind of amazing.
Yes. Okay, so first I love to say we're a $4.5 billion company that you don't know, but you all know, because we are running the critical infrastructure of data centers all over the world. So the reason you are on your Facebook app and posting on LinkedIn and making sure that your phone actually works is because our technology is working in those data centers. So it's a really cool place to work. Okay, so I arrive, and the company has, within a year prior, has been purchased by private equity and changed their name from Emerson Power to Vertiv. And they are the owners of a number of fantastic brands, including one called Liebert. And Liebert is an incredible brand in the data center space, so much so that when I went to visit one of my first customer visits, I walked in and I said, "Hi, I'm Jennifer Renaud from Vertiv," and the guy looks at me blankly and says, "I've never heard of you." And I'm like, "Wow, because you've got a lot of our stuff in your data center." And I said, "How about Liebert?" And he says, "Oh my God, do you want to see my Liebert?" Yeah.
So there are a couple of things I want to just point out, just sort of in there, the customer visit. By the way, in both examples that you said, you went to visit a customer, and I just want you to pause as you're listening to the show, if you're a CMO, and say, when's the next time I'm going to visit a customer? Like this week, some customer should be on your list, and it will be really interesting to have a conversation and learn something about your business, including maybe the fact that the name change was a little too quick. Okay, so we're at, and I also want to make one other note. Kathy Buttonbell, who was the CMO of Emerson, was on the show. Also, she joined a special episode on women in marketers specifically, and some advice. I have a daughter, and I wanted to get some advice for her in her career. So she was a great contributor. And Emerson is a really interesting brand. Obviously, they decided to divest that $4.5 billion company. And then your VC folks came in and said, well, we don't want the Emerson name. We probably don't even have the right to use it anymore. Ironically, it wasn't about the Emerson name. It was about the sub-brands within Emerson. Okay, so what happened when this VC and these folks, this before you got there, changes the names, and they changed the names of all the brands to Vertiv. What happened to the business?
So overall, I mean, business has stayed strong,
Right.
but we could probably be in an even bigger growth environment. But I think the bigger challenge is our sellers still identify as Liebert. Our customers still say they have a Liebert, even sometimes if it's not. And we took all of that all the way down. And so we took the Liebert stuff and said, we're just going to make it, a word at the bottom of a page. We're not going to make it front and center. So we did a test of one of our other brands, Avocent, and said, what if we take our www.avocent.com, which was pointing at Vertiv.com, and move it to its own page. And then when people type in, I'm not even doing SEO at this point, or SEM. I'm just saying, what if I just repoint Avocent.com back at a page? So suddenly, from that search term, I go from bounces to a lot of on-page activity and growth like crazy. It was phenomenal.
Okay, so let's just get this right. So you return brand name. This is a search-related thing. There's a group of people who are spending, I don't know how big that other brand that you just mentioned, but probably $500,000. It's a big business or something in that area. You allowed people to find it, and business improved simply because they could find the brand they were looking for. All right, well, this is easy to understand, right? Because if you were a Lexus person and suddenly Toyota said, you know what, we're not going to call Lexus Toyota anymore. We're just going to call it Toyota Premium. You'd kind of go, no, you would stop. You would just, if you go to a Toyota Premium, you would personally say, I'm not going there. I'm looking for Lexus. So this behavior shouldn't have been a surprise at all. Yet, what is it that allows a company and leadership to make a decision like that in your mind? What is it? Is it arrogance? And I'm putting words in your mouth, and I know this is hard because you're going to have to talk about people who probably still own the company, but how is it that something that feels so obvious, this decision could be made twice in your career in the last 5 years?
Well, I'm sure it happens to a lot of people, especially given the amount of M&A activity that goes on in the world. So I would say anyone who's involved in M&A probably has this challenge coming into it all the time. And in M&A, you buy the strongest brand. You're not looking for the weakest spoke in the wheel. You want this, you're looking for the strongest. And so, but you're doing it as an acquirer. So arrogance could be the word, but I think it's a belief in the power and strength of one brand doesn't necessarily need the other. So
that's certainly the case in Oracle.
Right, certainly the case at Oracle, and I believe may have been, and I would say even in the Vertiv decision-making process, I believe since it was already a new brand, let's just put all our eggs in the brand new brand basket and see if we can really drive that brand recognition and that brand and build that brand.
Right. And so this is an interesting part for me because I do believe in the focus. Now, typically we're talking about, when I'm talking about this, we're talking about a $50 million brand or $25 million brand who starts to create sub-brands and go, wait, why are you doing that? That energy is often wasted when you really don't have enough money. But when you're talking about a $500 million brand or a $1 billion brand and you suddenly take the name off. So I guess part of the solution in this case, if you really believe, like in Oracle's case or Adobe's case, two examples of the same thing, that there's probably a migration strategy that would make sense, right? If you're changing the name of your company to something else or a sub-brand to the parent brand, then there's got to be some migration strategy. In your mind, is that the solution here?
I do think so, and I think it needs to be a well thought out multi-year strategy. And I think you need to think about what this is going to look like over time. And you may change and evolve over time. You know, you might say, I want to be House of Brands versus Branded House over time. You can make changes in that decision, but you've got to give yourself the space to make those changes.
So, and then we talked a little bit about Liebert, and when the individual said, you want to see my Liebert, and I get the sense that sort of Liebert is like Kleenex or Xerox, and it is the eponym in the category. Is that a fair description?
That is a fair description.
So if you are lucky enough to have the Kleenex or Xerox, none of us would say, hey, Kleenex, you really ought to change your name to Kimberly Clark or whatever, whoever owns them. I may have screwed that up, but you just wouldn't do it. That'd be like ridiculous, but that's essentially what happened. All right, well, we're not going to beat up on the folks that made that decision, but we are going to be, if you are entertaining changing your brand name and you have loyal customers who identify with your brand, be careful not to walk away from that brand too quickly. Is there any other thing that I'm missing here and the lessons that you've learned from both of these two experiences?
Well, I would say be careful about walking away, but I would also say, and something I've learned is you can bring it back, because it actually does take a long time for people to de-identify with that brand.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And so if somebody made that mistake, yeah, you can bring back the brand, because it's funny, you know, if you don't have a brand name, you probably can't appreciate this, but when you work for a company or a product that people are excited about and want to show up and wear your brand, which is a pretty good decision, by the way, pretty good litmus test if people want to wear your brand. And consumers, they do that all the time. But I think people like to wear B2B brands too, if they feel really passionate about it. Okay, we're going to end this segment, and then when we come back, we're still in the taxi, the Uber, and we'll figure out what we're going to talk about next.
You've been listening to another great interview on Renegade Thinkers Unite with Drew Neiser. But the value doesn't end there. As a listener, you can download a free ebook from Drew, Renegade Thinkers, interviews with 11 trailblazing CMOs any business can learn from. Top marketing thought leaders and proven executives from Time Warner, American Express, and Chico's, and others. Get your free copy at renegadethinkersunite.com/ebook. For listeners only, at renegadethinkersunite.com/ebook.
Okay, we're back. And now we're going to talk about what do you do after you've discovered, wait, we killed these brands way too early and we need to bring them back, but we still have this one big parent brand. So talk about some of the things that you're doing now from a marketing standpoint to deal with this sort of multi-brand environment.
I think the beauty of some of the things that we can do in marketing is really test what might work and what might not. So we went to one event recently where the carousel just said Vertiv and Avocent. And, you know, it's great because people come up to us and they say, wow, I had no idea that you were here. And so it helps us a lot to get that brand up there. We also did a video that said, you know, we are Liebert, we are Cybex, we are Avocent, we are Chloride, we are Vertiv, you know, and ran that, you know, at events. And so, and, you know, pop-up banners and different ways of really trying to bring back, you know, and by the way, let me be really clear, not the old logos. The logos are not coming back. The name is coming back. And if we have trademark or registered trademark or anything associated with it, we're making sure we're bringing that back. But the old logos we are not bringing back. And so we are looking at ways that we can continue to bring that back. One of the things we learned at one event is, you know, a huge event, we're not in the guide in those sub-brand names because, of course, we're signing our contract as Vertiv. We're not in there as Avocent and Liebert and anything else. And so when people do walk by our booth and they see it, they go, oh, I didn't see you in the guide. And I didn't think you were here, but it turns out you're here. And, you know, which is amazing because then they're here and then we take a really big order. So it would be helpful for us to make sure that that's listed in the guide. So we're working on how to negotiate those sort of agreements to have multiple listings in the guide.
And you know what? It speaks to the stickiness of brand. People, and this is an interesting part of event marketing. First of all, we've had more and more conversations this year on the show about the power of events done right at B2B marketing. That's sort of number one. But number two, when you think about events, I know that so many companies are focused on prospects. And so they're really thinking about what kind of leads can we generate. But the most interesting thing is, and I know this from my experience at CES, is that we go to the booths of products that we buy already.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to because we have a question. We feel at home because, again, these are our people. This is our tribe. This is a brand that we relate to. So if you think about your booth first and foremost as a sort of customer service interaction opportunity, now, if your customers are looking for you and they can't find your brand in a program guide, it's kind of a problem.
It is kind of a problem, especially if they're making decisions about their ongoing investment in those products. Maybe they want to buy more, maybe they are having challenges with it. What you don't want to do is basically, drop the busy signal in and, beep, 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 sorry, we can't help you. So that's how that happens.
Drop the busy signal. That's what we're going to do. We're going to turn that into a song. We're going to drop the busy signal. That's a funny expression because that's really what this conversation has been about is if you, it's like changing your phone number of your business.
Yeah.
And suddenly people can't find you. You suddenly you lack an identity. So is there anything else in this sort of mix? You've tested events and trying to deal with a multi-brand environment at the events. What else are you doing to help your sort of business? I'll use the term recover and rebuild the loyalty of your current customers and the awareness that you have and the equity that you have in some of these sub-brands.
Yep. Well, I'd say there's some small things as well. I just had some sellers ask me if they could brand T-shirts with the Vertiv logo, or I should say a sub-brand logo. Okay. And I said, well, A, no to the logo. B, I will let you do a shirt that might have that product name and the Vertiv name on it because I do want to join those brands. But I think going in and saying, let's try a couple of things and see what might work. And I'm going to add to it that, the sellers probably are still aligned to those same product categories. And so they still have affinity to the brand. And so how do we make sure that we have them feel as connected? Because there's pride in that. And so how do I maintain that same pride as well? Because once it starts with our sellers in front of the customers, it continues to, kind of a great virtuous cycle of, more happiness and joy on that brand relationship.
And that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that, but in your environment, because you have resellers who are selling these things and putting together the whole systems, right?
Right.
And so when you rip the sort of those brands away from them, they might have even thought they don't exist anymore. And so then your pipeline that way drops too.
Exactly. And then, you're fighting something now where, and this conversation came up with someone yesterday as well. If you've got a 30-minute conversation and you're spending 25 minutes explaining the brand and then you've got 5 minutes to try and sell, that doesn't help anyone. So, how do we get that so we can shift that so it's a 5-minute conversation, 25-minute conversation instead? And those are the things. And I, as a B2B marketer, and I think, all my B2B marketing brethren will say this, we have limited budgets. We can't spend an unlimited amount of money creating the brand. I don't have Apple or Microsoft's, budget to go create consumer awareness. It doesn't happen. So given that I've got a much smaller amount of money, I've got to capitalize on anything I have to make it easier.
Well, I think the other thing, there is a big difference in the Oracle story and the Vertiv story. At least I've heard of Oracle. So I'm wondering, is part of the plan that you're doing, how are you going to be able to pump equity into Vertiv when it's really about these individual products?
Okay, so I'm gonna challenge the Oracle assumption just a little bit first.
Okay.
Because in Oracle, they primarily sold to IT buyers.
Right. Okay, by target.
And then they buy Oracle Marketing Cloud solutions, and now the buyer's the CMO.
Right.
So while the CMO might know might have heard of Oracle, they certainly don't know Oracle as a marketing technologist.
Right.
So that, so there was a leap there. But I agree, in the Vertiv location, everyone's bought really, we've got decent market share in a number of our categories. Somebody's probably bought one of our products along the way. They just don't know it. And that, I think, is the more difficult challenge. So building a brand new brand, when you are a larger company, we say we're, a large startup, and we are in a lot of ways, but we're not, because because we have some level of market share, and making that shift, I think, is that brand shift has been hard for everyone involved.
So, all right, you didn't really get. Let's sort of a couple things. First, if you were to do this again, starting from scratch, you would just they had just bought Emerson Power, and these guys. What would you just do a house of brand strategy?
Probably.
Yeah, and I think that's really the key. The key message here is, if you're in a acquisitive mode, and you've built up and you're buying a company, you ask yourself, what is the component of brand that matters in this thing? Are you really thinking you're just buying the technology and the relationships? Because if you are, you're probably making a mistake. And it's just, you can't just slap your name on it. Even if the difference between Oracle and Vertiv is pretty substantial. At least one has awareness and the other doesn't. They don't have awareness in the category, but it's a software company, so it's not a far stretch. In the case of Vertiv, you're starting at zero. So, all right. So be careful about walking away from your brand, number one. That's key. Number two, if you find yourself in this unique situation, I think if we were starting from scratch now, and we were trying to make the argument for brand, just in general, versus demand generation, do you think you could help the folks? They're talking to their CEO, they're talking to the board of directors. How would you make the case for brand based on your experience?
Well, one of my favorite books is A More Beautiful Question. And in some of the questions you could ask is, when you're making the case for brand, then what happens in the absence of brand? And I think having case studies like these that say, here's what happens when you have it and it's gone, says one thing. So if you can get it, which means you need to invest in it properly, it does mean something. There is a value to it. And frankly, as a C-level executive, if you're looking for some sort of, let's say, you're a mid-sized company and you're looking for an end game, you're looking for an acquisition, what gets acquired is the brand. Yeah. And so you want to be building that brand for that purpose. Your goal should be, there's a certain value in that brand. Let's make sure we understand that we are building to it.
Right. Do you subscribe to the interbrand brand valuation model? Are you familiar with it at all?
Yes, I am familiar with it, and I just was reading about it today.
Okay.
On one subject, and so yes, I've seen a little bit of it.
So I have talked with an individual who I won't name here or embarrass, who has said that it's essentially really a black box and there's a little voodoo behind the scenes. But it is accepted as a genuine way of evaluating brand. And some companies even are trying to, I think I had Alicia Tillman on the show from SAP, and she is measuring the success of her marketing based on where they end up on the brand valuation model.
And I would totally see doing that. And I think that's a great C-level conversation. I have followed other brands as a result. Like I've watched, where does 3M appear on that brand valuation model? Companies that are native to, my hometown, because I want to know more about what's happening there, and then go back and look at what are they doing that's improving their brand or changing their brand, or not doing what is absent that is preventing that. So I could see having that on a global scorecard for a business.
So since we just came away from the CMO Club Summit, it's drinking from a fire hose, but
I'm interested in, and I'm sure you were making notes of some of the things that the key takeaways that you had from the summit, perhaps related to brand or just in marketing in general.
So, my number one key takeaway is that as marketers, we really do need to redefine the role, because no matter whether you're in B2C or B2B, everything is changing so fast in what's happening around us, how consumers buy, how businesses buy, the impact of geopolitical situations, etc. That the role of the marketer can add more value, but it's a super complex job, because we've talked about brand, but we've also talked about demand, and we could talk about people, and we could talk about the right product mix, and are we pricing it right, and what do we do about tariffs, and it's a super complex job. Which that was probably, takeaway number 2 is that this is a really hard, complex job, which is why we did the drinking from a fire hose conversation, why we're all a little bit tired, because there's a lot going on in the space. And I think that's the beauty of it, actually. Like, I think that's the part that's so much fun.
Yeah, I think you have to have a high tolerance. I mean, the folks that listen to the show regularly, so I talk a lot about the 4 characteristics of courage: artful, thoughtful, and scientific. But I would say, for me, sort of the reminder, and this happens every 6 months at the summit, is get together with your peers. And, even if you just have to say, this moment at this second with this situation kind of sucks, how did you deal with that? And what's amazing is when you get together with a bunch of your peers, you find folks that have exactly the same challenges, and some of them have solved it. That was so simple. I got that. I can do that. And it was fun to watch this. And the other part of it was fun to watch was when one CMO would talk about for example, their ABM, demand generation, or sales and versus marketing issue. And they talked about it in such a rudimentary way for their organization. And you're at an organization that's really advanced. I can see people going, I feel better. I'm like 10 steps ahead of that. So there are a lot of other good things. But anyway, this has been good. I think we've beaten the subject of the importance, if you're lucky enough to build a brand, really respect that. And the litmus test is, do your customers identify with your product so much so that they'd be willing to wear it on a shirt or refer to themselves as Eloqua or Eloqua? So know your customer. You do that by going and talking to them. And then importantly, if you're going to events, make sure you're there and present and thinking about your customers first. Anything else you want to add, Jennifer?
Should we have a song now?
Oh, please. Yes, what would you like to sing?
Kidding, I'm terrible singing.
Oh, yeah, no, my wife would kill me, and I think my daughter is like, Dad, you're not going to sing. I promised her I would probably never sing on the show, but if I ever have, I had, early on, I had Will Daly, who did sing on the show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he was really cool, so we'll link to that, and that was fun to have somebody sing. All right, so for all of those who have enjoyed this taxi ride podcast, maybe I'll have to just do this again. It'll be a reinvention of Renegade Thinkers. I thought we were pretty on the case. So Jennifer, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And to the listeners out there, I'm going to thank you for hanging with us. If you enjoyed this, share it with a friend, write a review. Always appreciate that. And until next time, keep those Renegade thinking caps on and strong.
This has been Renegade Thinkers Unite, but it doesn't end there. Just go to renegadethinkersunite.com for more and subscribe to the show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. We'll talk with you next time on Renegade Thinkers Unite.